Harley-Davidson's use of the CV40 Keihin carburetor was smart. In 1988, the Evolution Sportster moved away from a Keihin Butterfly carburetor with an accelerator pump to the CV40 constant velocity carburetor. The big twins transitioned to a CV40 the next year. Keihin CV40 proved itself through 2006 and remains a reliable, easy-to-service carburetor. Set up properly, the CV40 is the next best thing to electronic fuel injection. The CV40 does need periodic maintenance, which includes rebuilding and renewal of any worn parts. That's our project. We begin with bench disassembly, followed by a thorough cleaning in our ultrasonic cleaning machine. Once clean, we'll do a close inspection for wear and identify parts needs. Final assembly steps, including precise float adjustment, will complete the rebuild. Part 1. Disassembly and cleaning. A factory workshop manual for your specific Harley-Davidson model should be available when doing this work. Between 1988 and 2006, there are several changes in the CV40 Keihin carburetor. Refer to the factory service manual and Harley-Davidson parts diagrams when determining the differences between your carburetor and this 2001 XL1200S carburetor. We're about to rebuild the Keihin CV40 carburetor. This is a unit that I purchased at eBay. Shows very little wear. The identification number is the exact replacement for a 1998 to 2003 Sportster XL1200S Sport. Harley-Davidson logo and shield carburetor. We will rebuild and restore the carburetor. This used carburetor came with a choke cable attached. I'll have a spare. Remove the starter or enrichment valve by pulling up on the spring and sliding it out. Inspect the enricher valve bore. Keihin CV40 screws are JIS number 2. Press inward while applying pressure to turn the screw without twisting the head out. Any more pressure than this will strip out the head of the screw. This is where I turn to the impact driver tool. The impact driver tool drives downward and rotates at the same time. Our goal is to get it to rotate without stripping the head out. These bits are JIS, not Phillips. I'm using extreme care here. I want the force to rotate the screw, not drive through the plastic cover. I take the slack out of the tool before hitting the top with a sharp rap. The downward force protects the crosshead slots. The rotational force turns the screw. I hit the tool head sharply, but not hard. The idea is not to drive the tool through the parts, in this case a plastic cover and an aluminum base to the carburetor. The carburetor base is setting on a block of wood. Make certain that nothing gets damaged from the downward force of the tool. I use a similar approach on this larger screw that holds the linkage bracket. Now the JIS number 2 screwdriver easily removes these screws and the heads are still intact. The long screw that holds the upper end of the linkage bracket has no shoulder. Instead, it uses this sleeve. The plastic diaphragm cover has a spring beneath it, so release the cover carefully. This is a calibrated spring, so don't stretch it or elongate it when you remove the spring. This is the needle holder and spring seat. Always protect the diaphragm and piston. Remove the diaphragm carefully from the body of the carburetor. protect the needle as well. Unless damaged, ruptured, or worn out, the diaphragm and needle will be reused. Inspect the diaphragm for tears, ruptures, or swelling. Use a bright light behind the diaphragm to look for pinholes. The piston is in excellent condition. There is no wear in the piston bore. The float bowl screws are overly tight, just like the cap screws were. It's time for the impact driver. The diaphragm base is flat and goes well against the block of wood for use of the impact driver. Note that I rotate the tool to take out any of the slack before tapping it with the hammer. This prevents wasted rotational motion when you tap the top of the tool with a hammer. The well-directed wrap spins the tool as it goes downward to prevent damaging the crossheads. Force is released in the rotational movement so the parts below the tool do not get damaged. The block of wood helps. The well-directed wrap spins the tool as it goes downward to prevent damaging the crossheads. Always make sure that you've backed up the opposite side carefully. Now the number 2 JIS screwdriver spins these screws out without any trouble. The screw heads are intact. This saves chasing down screws of the right length and type, which could take up to a week if we're talking about mail order. The original equipment Keihin screws are excellent quality. Keep in mind though, they are JIS. Protecting these slotted screw heads saves a lot of wasted time. These screws were removed without damaging any part of the carburetor. When cross-slot screws are damaged, the Vampire Tools screw extractor is a solution. This specially designed tool can grab just the head of the screw. The tool will work in confined spaces. Removing the float bowl will access the float, the needle, and the jets. The Sportster Sport features a different float bowl than other models. There is no drain. Also missing is an overflow tube. Since this is a used carburetor, we'll want to check the jets for sizing and make sure that they are consistent with the recommendations in the factory shop manual. I am getting ready to remove the pin that holds the float. There is a risk of breaking the arms that support the pivot pin. Here, I am using a method that I find very helpful. The pin should be driven out in the direction that the arrow on the casting of the body shows. The small diameter socket has an opening big enough to receive the pin. The diameter of the socket is just big enough to support that arm. I'm using a jeweler's screwdriver to tap the pin through. This is the end of the pin that the factory tapped from. You can see at the end of the pin it's slightly mushroomed. In measuring this, it's a 1/2 inch larger in diameter. Driven through in the wrong direction, this would be enough to break the arm. In reinstalling the pin, the end that is normal sized will go in first. Lift it straight up. The float and needle come out together. This is a factory Keihin CV40 float. This is the needle jet holder or emulsion tube. It also holds the main jet. I like to use a quality wrench like my 9mm snap-on box-ended wrench for the needle jet holder. I'm removing the emulsion tube needle jet holder with the main jet still secure in the needle jet holder. The needle jet is still in the carburetor body. Here, the emulsion tube and its very fine holes is visible. This part needs thorough cleaning in the ultrasonic tank. Here, I am very pleased to find that the main jet is the original Keihin jet, a 195, which is unique to the Sportster XL 1200S Sport. Other XLH 1200 models of that era use a 185 main jet for sea level. This bellows seal on the accelerator pump rod will be replaced. The CV Performance rebuild kit has a new bellows seal. These stainless Allen screws on the accelerator pump cover are aftermarket. I'm gripping the accelerator pump housing while I loosen these screws to avoid putting pressure between the pump housing part of the main body casting and the main body. For authenticity, I'll replace these 3 stainless screws with OEM-style cross-slot JIS screws with lock washers. It will look OEM. This is a carburetor restoration. Some believe that the use of stainless steel requires some sort of an anti-seize or barrier between the aluminum and the stainless steel. The concern has to do with galvanic reaction, which usually takes place in a wet or marine-type environment where disparate metals can be an issue. It's doubtful that a galvanic reaction would be an issue on an air-cooled hot-running motorcycle engine. I'm changing to conventional hardware, but not for that reason. The pump diaphragm is in good shape, another indication that this is not a high-mileage carburetor. This looks like an OEM style and likely the original accelerator pump diaphragm. This diaphragm will definitely be kept as a spare, and I will run it through the ultrasonic cleaner. The cleaning agent that I'm using in the ultrasonic cleaning machine will not affect rubber or this diaphragm. The slight amount of oxidation shown here is from the bellows seal leaking. This could be moisture coming in from weather, but more likely from washing the motorcycle. The ultrasonic cleaner solution and distilled water in the ultrasonic cleaning machine will take care of this corrosion. Parts like this should not be placed in corrosive, caustic, chemical, hot tank, or cold tank degreasers. Rubber parts, in particular, will swell up, deteriorate, and be destroyed. Carburetor soaks like Gumout or Berryman B12 should only be used on metal parts. These products and gunk are very effective at cleaning metal parts and some plastics. Read labels and instructions before using any of these products. The accelerator pump nozzle is one area of concern. The orifice is very small and there's a check valve inside the nozzle. By design, the check valve is very difficult to clean without removing the nozzle. Unless removed properly, a damaged nozzle means time to buy a new float bowl or an aftermarket nozzle. We'll attempt to clean the nozzle in place. After the ultrasonic cleaning, we'll see how effective the accelerator pump circuit is working. Here, I am removing any residue of gasoline or materials that would contaminate the fresh cleaning solution in the part's ultrasonic cleaner. While the ultrasonic cleaning machine would not be damaged by petroleum-based grease, oil, or even gasoline, the cleaning solution is $38 a gallon, and I have a full gallon in the machine now. Important to note, flammables, like gasoline, should never be used in an ultrasonic cleaning machine. Here, I'm loosening the tension on the spring for the throttle valve return. This is to enable the throttle valve to be partially open during the cleaning process. This will make the bore much cleaner if the throttle valve is not resting under pressure against the bore. The linkage is in excellent condition, and in this case I'm leaving it intact and not removing cotter pins, washers, and bushings for the throttle linkage. Feel for play in the throttle valve shaft. Anywhere between the shaft and the body of the carburetor is a potential air leak. The idle mixture screw chamber has a Welch plug over the top from the factory. This Welch plug is removed, as seen here, to adjust the idle mixture. The chamber to the idle mixture screw is too narrow for a number 1 screwdriver. I have this multiple screwdriver set with narrow shanks. Before removing the screw, I very carefully turn the screw inward and seat it gently, counting the number of turns, so I can re-establish that as a baseline when installing the idle mixture screw. The idle mixture screw comes out of the chamber. There is also a spring, a buffer washer, and an O-ring in the chamber. Here the idle mixture screw comes out with the spring. The buffer washer and O-ring are still in the chamber. This washer acts as a bushing between the O-ring and the spring. Once again, this narrower shank screwdriver is handy for removing the slow jet. The slow jet is responsible for lower throttle response and also feeds the idle circuit. If you want to know more about the circuits in a CV40 carburetor, the channel features a video on specifically how the CV40 carburetor operates. This is an original equipment Keihin slow jet, number 42, which is appropriate for this XL1200S application. The jet has very small orifices, which will be cleaned up in the ultrasonic cleaning machine. Close inspection with a magnifier shows this is a number 42 slow jet. The jet has the Keihin factory trademark symbol. Like the main jet, this is the original jetting for this carburetor. With the removal of the cotter pins and E-clips, the throttle linkage can be removed if necessary. In this case, the ultrasonic cleaning machine should be capable of cleaning this linkage up thoroughly. A major concern in terms of carburetor wear is the throttle shaft. Check the throttle shaft for movement in the main body of the carburetor. This could be a source of an air leak if there's any radial movement. The shaft is hard material, and generally the wear is into the body of the carburetor. Slight sideways movement is normal. Movement of the shaft out of center is not normal. While throttle shaft bores in the carburetor body can be rebushed, generally the carburetor body gets tossed. Surface replacement bushings are likely not available. Again, slight sideways or axial movement is acceptable. Out of center or radial movement of the shaft in the bushings or body of the carburetor is not acceptable, as this would be the source of an air leak. As far as removing the throttle valve goes, this is an unnecessary move. In fact, it's very unsafe. The backside of these two screws are staked, and if you remove the screws, you would have to restake them. Otherwise, the screws could loosen and go through the engine. Unless an effort is made to rebush the throttle shaft, there's no point in removing this valve. With the return spring unloaded, this valve moves freely and will allow the throttle bore to be cleaned completely. Here you can see the staking on the backside of the throttle screws. Restaking these screws would require bracing the backside of the throttle shaft so as not to bend it. This is a good time to test this plug for seepage. If necessary, we'll restore it to look like the plug at this side. Each of the air jets will be thoroughly cleaned. The needle jet is removable. I will leave it in place as it can be thoroughly cleaned without removing it. The tiny transition orifices must be cleaned thoroughly. The ultrasonic cleaner should do a good job with that. This carburetor was likely pre-cleaned by the seller at eBay. It's relatively clean. I'd guess that the cleaning took place in an ultrasonic cleaning machine with the carburetor fully assembled. There were no gasoline fumes, so this cleaning may have been for shipping purposes. Fully stripped now, our new ultrasonic cleaning machine should do a stellar job on the carburetor body, the bowl, and all of the small parts. I've decided to test this plug for a leak before cleaning the carburetor. This passageway is part of the vent system from the float bowl. The vent is out the face into the air cleaner where my finger is covering the port now. Rather than doing a vacuum test, I put water atop the plug and I'm blowing air up through the vent passageway from the float bowl end. This simple sign of bubbles shows that the plug is leaking. I direct air through the vent in the float bowl area. It's time to replace this plug. Here, I drill through the plug very gently, making certain that the drill does not pass through the plug and go deep into the bore. Using a sheet metal screw, I turn the screw in just a few turns. I don't want it to go deeply into the bore. With the base of the head exposed, I pry gently and use the screw as a tool for pulling up the plug. With very little effort and no damage to the carburetor body, the plug is out. This plug looks well used and alien to this carburetor. Some Scotch-Brite restores the surface of this chamber. The float needle is a critical part. This is included in the rebuild kit, so we'll run it through the ultrasonic cleaner to keep this check valve as a spare. The float should be inspected closely. If it feels weighted or in any way feels like it has liquid in it, the float is defective and needs to be replaced. This stainless steel basket can be completely enclosed. All the small parts and floating parts, like the float, go into this basket. The tank has been preheated to 154 degrees Fahrenheit and will go through a 15-minute clean cycle once the basket is in place. This cleaner has a unique degassing feature, which eliminates nitrogen and oxygen gases in the solution. This makes cleaning far more effective and helps the solution find crevices that gas bubbles would prevent the solution from reaching. Once all parts are removed from the basket and have cooled slightly, the surface areas and every passageway are blown out with compressed air. Make sure the stream of air is blowing through the entire passageway. Here I'm checking the flow through the needle jet. This is the float seat to the fuel inlet. These are the float bowl vent passageways. This is the port where the plug will be replaced. All small passageways, including the air inlets, need to be blown out. The ID tag is gone, but we recorded the number. Here I'm checking the flow from the accelerator pump to the nozzle. If the check valve is seating properly, there should be no airflow in this direction. I'm feeling air in this direction, and this is not a good sign. On this pre-2004 example, the float bowl is set up so that this port should be a one-way flow of air to the accelerator pump nozzle. In part 2 of this video series, we will take the nozzle out and inspect the check valve. The diaphragm and piston have cleaned up nicely. There is no damage to the diaphragm. The diaphragm should be inspected with a bright light shine behind the diaphragm. We now have a number of points that need attention. In the following part 2 of this video series, we will restore those items that need attention and assemble the carburetor.